In a moment, Joe Montaldo back with us as we talk about his latest study tracking how some human blood types may more likely have been from abduction experiences from ETs. It's an amazing story, and we've got it next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast, George Norrie with you. Joe Montaldo back with us, founder and director of ICAR, International Community for Alien Research. ICAR has close to 7,000 abduction cases on file. Mr. Montaldo has been a researcher, investigator of alien contact, abductions, and experiences for more than 30 years. He is the owner of Paranormal Radio and the host of Wake Up USA, a UFO study. He's also a board member representing contactees for Dr. Michael Sala's Exopolitics Institute. Joe, welcome back. How you been?
Oh, good. Nice to hear from you again, George. It's been a while since I talked to you.
You too. Life good? COVID okay? No problems there?
Believe it or not, I was in L.A. for 10 days. I just got back. Picked up COVID while I was there.
Oh, no. Did you?
Yeah. But it was mild. I'm about 7 days through it. So, yeah, I was out there working press for Writers of the Future. So I was like, it's just one of them things when you're around that many people, two planes coming, two planes going and all that wonderful. But, hey, it happens sometimes.
Yeah, you sound good, though.
Yeah, I'm feeling way better, actually. It's just one of them things. What can you do? You just got to keep on plugging away. Yeah, I've been dying to talk to y'all for a while, but between hurricanes, I can't ever seem to get any free time anymore.
Yeah, you're down still in Mississippi, aren't you?
Yeah,
that area?
Mississippi and Louisiana. Yeah, my construction company's out in New Orleans, but we've been so busy. I mean, it's like every 2 years by the time we get caught up with our customers, we get another storm.
Yeah, they just keep coming.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And I got so much research on the board. I'm like, look, stop. I need a break, hurricane. I need a break. I need to get caught up in my research is what we've been doing. We're getting ready to do a huge dump here in a couple of weeks.
Well, good. Just make sure you update us, too, on that.
Oh, I will.
How did you get involved in ICAR?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I was kind of anti-alien, anti-UFO when I was young. And I kept getting people just out of the blue would come tell me, I think I've been abducted. I'm like, what? I couldn't figure out why they were telling me in the first dang place. I was like, come on, people. I don't believe in this. Why you keep doing this? But after I met 4 or 5 people who were really, really, really credible, I mean, they were high up in their professions. They had a lot at stake. And I was like, well, there's got to be something to it. So I started out as a debunker, to be totally honest with you. So I was trying to debunk everything I could get my hands on. And I did manage to debunk a lot of stuff, but then there was just a lot of stuff I couldn't debunk. And the more I looked into it, the more I was like, man, come on. And so here we are. I think I'd have to call Jesse, but I think we're almost close to 90,000 cases now.
Wow.
And, it's almost.
They got to update your bio now. Jeez.
Matter of fact, that whole website's being updated for the dump. So I'll send y'all. I'm going to send you this one, but I was flying and got caught in between. It was just kind of one of them weird things this week. But no, I've been missing y'all a lot. As a matter of fact, what got me is I was listening to someone talk about you were going to have dinner in L.A. with a comedian, and that's what made me think about y'all. I said, let me give him a call. And I just called him. We were talking about you having dinner with somebody out there.
Hank Garrett from Car 54. Where are you? Remember that show?
Okay. Yeah, okay. And
way back.
Yeah, so when I heard it, I said, you know what? I haven't talked to him in a while. Called around a couple of people I knew that might have the number because I had the old number, believe it or not, the 0100. That thing's probably older than I am. And then finally, I ran across one of my friends that had it. So let me give him a call. Lisa, give her a call and see if she can get me on. And here we are. So it's been a whirlwind, is what it's been. I mean, almost. Let's see. I've been married almost 40 years. So
good for you.
37 years I've been doing this. 38 years I've been doing this now. And all we do is correlate data. Somebody said, well, I don't know why you don't want to get famous. It's from this. I said, the idea is just to get the research and put it into the field, get the research, put it into the field. And if people use it, they use it. If they don't, they don't. I noticed, matter of fact, I think it was The Returned. You were on the same episode with me. It was the second time I did the alien blood type release. I did it once in New York for a radio station, a TV station up there. And then Ancient Aliens called us and asked if we do The Return. And I said, okay, well, we'll put it on there. And then 2 years later, they invited us back. I think it was Taken is what the episode was.
That was a great segment you did.
Yeah, and there was a lot of good material on there. And so here we are all these years later, and we keep every decade we release a bunch of stuff. So that's what we're doing right now. This is part 2 of the blood study we're putting out. Because frankly, honestly, when I got into this, I never thought I would find a correlation with blood and abductees. I really thought it was going to be the same thing, 37% this, 18% that, 9% this, 7% that, 1.5% that. That's what I thought I was going to find. After about, I think we realized around 36,000 that we had something. And then we went back through all of our applications because that was just people going to the website who said they were abductees. So you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. So we went back through all of our applications, and we noticed there was a trend. RH negative was a trend. It was a hardcore trend. I think it's 69% of all of our abductees RH negative.
That's amazing.
It's weird because no one knows where RH negative came from. It appeared 35 or 45,000 years ago out of the blue, and for no reason. As far as I know, Mother Nature didn't need it. She was well on her way to procreating our planet, and for a long time, RH negative killed babies. I mean, that's why we used to have the. Well, some of you listeners are probably too young for this. In the old days, you used to have to get a blood test and to get a marriage license.
That's right. That's absolutely
and that's
right.
why, because RH negative with RH positive could create stillborn babies. So I'm thinking, why would Mother Nature create this? You know, so I met a hematologist. Actually, I met three. And when I contacted the first one, he laughed at me. He goes, "Oh, you do UFOs."
He knew that?
Yeah, so he started laughing. So I sent him all the data I had. So then he calls me on the phone. He said, "Well, wait, what is this?" I said, "This is what we've been learning. This is what I just want to get your opinion." So he got all wrapped up into us, gave us all of his maps from all the research from around the world that he's done on hematological research, and we found out things like RH negative, O negative is the universal donor, O negative is also the purest form of blood known to man, where all of our hematological research comes from, and yet here our majority of our contactees are in the RH negative range. And I'm thinking this can't be a coincidence. I'm like, there's just got to be more to this. So the more we looked into it, the more people we found in the RH negative category. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't mean if you're RH positive you can't be a contactee. It just means there's less of them. And the other weird thing about this is, 40,000 years ago, so maybe it was 1% RH negative. Today, I think it's up to about 18%. It's growing. And it seems to be pushing RH positive people out. So it just keeps growing.
What do you think they're doing, Joe, with the RH negative people or the blood type?
It's a good question because I wonder if they're just gently changing who we are. Because if you look around, RH negative is what created blue and green eyes. Before RH negative, basically we lived in a brown hair, brown eyed, brown skinned planet for 2 million years. And then all of a sudden, this emerges on the scene. We start having these mutations. It's RH negative people seem to be a little more aggressive. And I don't mean in a bad way, but they're more likely to go out and do something, achieve something. Their personalities seem to be more high in high power. We found out recently that a lot of politicians and a lot of movie stars are RH negative.
Interesting.
Blue or green eyed, and it's just weird because it's it's so much smaller of a segment of the population to be representing so much of a larger part of the population. And it just keeps snowballing. I'm like, well, what could they possibly want with this? So the best guess is this is how they're changing our society. So I called a friend of mine at Boeing. I mean, not at Boeing, at the Air Force, just recently because in 2000, the Air Force and Navy reinstituted their psychic programs. They dropped their remote viewing programs and instituted psychic ability programs. So I called a friend over there and I said, let me ask you a question. I said, do me a favor. I said, I don't want to know anything top secret. I said, I'd like you to pool the people you got and see how many are RH negative versus RH positive in your pool. A couple of weeks go by, I don't hear anything. A couple of weeks go by, I don't hear anything. So I ran into the General of Space Command at one of the things I was attending, and I asked him if he'd ask for me. About a week goes by, he calls me, he said 72% of their
Wow.
are RH negative. So I was just taken back. I was like, what the, so it seems like that on this side, and it doesn't necessarily mean you don't have psychic abilities, people if you're RH positive, it just seems like these people tend to have more abilities, stronger abilities, and now that I know the Air Force and Navy are doing it, it seems like there's more RH negatives in those positions.
And what percent of the human population is RH negative?
15% currently.
So with 15% of the population RH negative, yet 70% are those that were abducted. That's huge.
That's huge. And when I first seen this 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I was like, what? And that's why we kept going back over because it was giving me a headache. I'm like, no, this can't be right. It has to be the same as the population of the planet. Because O positive is 37%. I think A's like 36%. So I kept looking and looking and looking, and it didn't make any sense. And then I stumbled across something else. Did you know that Central and South America are 98% O?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's significant because nowhere else in the world does that. And of course, we know the Nazcans are down there. We know the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incans were down there. We know there was a lot of societies down there that seemed to worship aliens, and now we find out that there's a huge segment of the population that was and no one can explain it. Anytime I ask anybody, nobody can give me a reasonable explanation. I said, well, maybe they came across it. Obviously, they didn't come over the land bridge, so where did they come from? So the deeper we get into this, the more the puzzle seems to go. But when you go back to the alien aspect, when I put people under, because when we do hypnosis now, we do voice stress analysis with the hypnosis, and
to determine if they're telling you the truth or not.
Well, part of it's that, but part of it is, George. So let's say I get you down to level 5, and I have you tell me about an abduction, and I don't see any of the lines moving. I'm going to question the experience.
Okay.
Because you know as well as I do, these people are stressed in some way or another. So
absolutely,
it should be showing stress in there. If they're not, I'm like, this sounds like a story to me, because I've never met anybody who's a true abductee. When I put them under there and put that stress meter on it, that meter was fluctuating all over the place.
And what percent, Joe, do you think people are lying to you?
In the old days, I would have said it was about 60-40. These days, it seems to have changed a little bit. It's probably dropped about 40-60 now. I noticed since we've updated the sites and really made the applications harder, the amount of people trying to lie has gone down. Because what we did was we used to have 25 question questionnaire. Now it's 75. And it's quite detailed. So I noticed the true people will go ahead and fill it out. The people who are faking usually will get like halfway through or
stop.
Then stop. It's just too much for most of them. So that's why we did it like that. And that's what we're getting ready. We're getting ready to release that in 3 weeks. The gray and reptilian and human studies are going to come out. Oh, and by the way, after all this time of doing this, I'm finally got a book coming out. It's called Contacted Navarre.
Good for you.
Yes.
Well, let's get you back again. When's that book come out?
Hopefully in 5 weeks. I'm going to send it to some of my friends that I met in California from the writers, the award people at Writers of the Future, and let them edit it for me and look at it. Because it's because of them I'm writing it. They were driving me nuts about writing a book for the last 2 years.
Well, you tell Lisa about it, and we'll get you back.
I will. I'll definitely give her a call. As soon as it comes out, I'll holler at you, because it's going to be an interesting book. It is about an 11-day missing. It's a case we did where they lost 11 days in Gulf Breeze, Florida.
All right, we'll do that. Now, what was the impetus to start the blood study? What was the reason?
Well, one day I was sitting with my director who was taking over my job, and we were just going through applications. And she goes, Joe, there seems to be a lot of people in here, because we asked blood type on the application.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes, and it wasn't for anything particular at the time, though. And we noticed that a lot of them seemed to be Rh negative. So then we said, okay, we're going to launch this study and see what we find. So the first thing I did, I forgot where I was on radio somewhere, and I had launched and said, look, if you think you've been abducted or this, that, other thing, go to the ICAR site, take the thing, tell us what percentage, tell us what blood type you are. Tell us what color eyes you have, and what because it's 50-50 on contactees with green and blue eyes. So it's like their mutations are carrying true through the contactees, or abductees, whatever you want to call them. It seems to be carrying true through there. It's almost like whoever or whatever created this mutation way back in the day, it was intentional. Because because when I started this study, blue and green eyes were 5%. Now they're 18%. And that's just in 40 years.
So do you think the Rh negative people might have been hybrids in the beginning?
They might have been. It's a good chance that there was some kind of interaction between some local population and the aliens, because there's no other real explanation for it. I mean, I can't get any scientists to give me, and I've talked to many of them. I host a show called Science and Behavior, and no one can give me a reason why. I'm like, come on, guys. Y'all advanced. Y'all been doing this all your life. Tell me why this is here, and they can't. So when I say stuff like, well, could it have been some kind of hybrid? Maybe there was another population on the planet that we interbred with. They'll go for that as long as you don't use the word alien. As soon as you use the word alien, they get all, frenzy-winsy.
Right. They don't want anything to do with it.
But when you don't, they're like, well, it is popular. Maybe there was an indigenous population that we didn't know about that's since died off that was heavy Rh negative, and they just simply interbred with the rest of the population. That may or may not be true. I mean, none of us were around to know for sure, but it does seem like at the rate it's going, and when I talked with Bruce just recently, one of our hematologists, he said at the rate that this is going, he would suggest that Rh negative would be 50% in less than 20,000 years. In less than 100,000, it will be the dominant blood type on the planet. So
that's huge.
Yes, and that's a direction. I mean, somebody had to do that. Whether you want to blame it on Mother Nature, aliens, or whatever, something is changed the course of humans. And when you look at Rh negative people's personalities, they're different than Rh positive personalities. It's not necessarily that one's better or worse than the other; they're just different. They tend to be more; their psychic abilities tend to stand out more. They tend to be more go-getters. They tend to want to be more involved with things on the planet. I notice a lot of them tend to, how can I say this politely?
Yes, we
are very
remember
green.
this is radio. This
Yes,
is radio.
yes, they're very green. We'll leave it at that, and which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just they get a little overly ambitious with it sometimes. But it's not like anybody's telling me, "Oh, the planet's going to die or end." They just want to see a significant change in our population.
Are you baffled by this study, by the results that you're
A lot
getting?
of it I am because some things to us it gives us something to look for now. And it also helps us with when we're dealing with other contactees. But there's really just no simple explanation for it other than alien contact. No one can give me an explanation for where this came from or why it's here or why it's pushing so hard through our DNA in our life. Because really, just in the 30 years I've been in this, it's changed. I mean, both Rh negative is going up and blue and green eyes have gone up, and it seems to be moving faster than it should be. If it started out at whatever percentage way back 40,000 years ago, and then all of a sudden it was 15%, now it's 18%. 20,000 will be over 50%. 40,000 will be closer to 80%. Why? Why is this going this way? And I mean, we've got all the maps that show all the how all the planets laid out as far as its blood types. And this is weird because South and Central America, like we said earlier, are 98% O. And then
The Middle East too.
yeah,
I'm O positive, for example.
and so that's what I tell people. People ask me all the time, well, positive people are abductees. I said, yes, positive people are abductees. It just seems like we're just being changed slowly but surely. The population is being manipulated, but not in a way that, how can I say this? So whoever started this or whatever started this manipulated the population, and now it's just taking its own course. It's kind of like COVID. It just took off, and now it's doing its own thing. And it just keeps moving forward. It keeps going. It keeps moving forward. And more people calling us and coming in are H positive. When I talked to Jessie a couple of weeks ago, she wanted to update it because they're in the middle of rebuilding the site. She wanted to update it to like 74% of the abductees are Rh negative. And I'm like, I don't understand why it keeps going and keeps pushing. And when you interview these people, they are very intelligent, kind of laid back, but kind of aggressive at the same time, if that makes sense. So
Are they scared?
no, they're not actually. They seem to embrace it. That's another weird thing. I mean, when I talk to people about this and say, the majority of people who are being abducted are HR, they're all like, "Oh, really? Man, that sounds."
Do they only recollect, Joe, under hypnosis, or do they know about it in their normal casual living?
It depends on the individual. Some people just know it's part of their life, and they've incorporated it in their life. Some people they don't realize it until you put them under, and then it comes out. And we're so strict about hypnosis that it's scary, but because we want everything to be legit. We don't do hypnosis. In other words, we're not going to use questions like aliens or extraterrestrials or blood type or any of that. And I'm just going to ask you about an experience that you've had, and I want you to tell me forward and backward, and then we'll set up a line of questioning for it. But that way it works really well. And of course, we have the voice stress running, and we always make them bring somebody with them when we're doing hypnosis for their safety and ours. So it works really good. But for some reason, they're embracing this at a scary way. I mean, when I was speaking just recently at a conference in D.C.
Hold on for a second, Joe. We're coming up to the break. We'll pick that up. And then I want to get into the reptilian and gray questionnaire that you've talked about and see what's going on in that arena as well. Joe Montaldo with us. His website is icar1.com. It's all linked up for you at coasttocoastam.com. We're going to take your calls next hour with Joe Montaldo as we talk about their incredible research into the blood type studies of alien abduction folks. And then we're going to also talk to him about reptilians and grays as well and what's going on in that arena. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Norrie with you. Joe Montaldo with us as founder and director of ICAR, which stands for International Community for Alien Research. And we're talking about their blood type study, where the overwhelming amount of people who have been abducted happen to be Rh negative, which is still bizarre, Joe, isn't it?
Jesse sent me the updated numbers for the website. So it's 91,200 cases. Out of that, 71% are Rh negative. Out of that, 42% are O negative.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm not
But negative
exactly.
seems to pop up all the time here.
Yes, it just seems to be a theme that's running through, and it seems to be growing. I mean, originally, I want to say it was like 55%, which was shocking. But now it just seems to be getting. I don't want to say worse, but it keeps seeming to grow. The more cases we get in, the more it seems like the Rh negative is taking over. Um, so right now, I'd say we're down to 30% O. I mean, not O, 30% positive, which is weird to me since the planet is what 85% positive. We'll say for the sake of argument,
Yeah.
this is growing 80% positive. It's two and two is not making four here. It's making more like 40. It's one of these things that you have to stop and wonder why. And then, it's funny sometimes when we ask the blood type question, we actually have a kit that you can get off the site for free. People are like, well, I don't know what blood type I'm in. I said, well, maybe you need to find out and see. But it doesn't stop anybody from getting abducted. It just seems like it's been moving. So I would think somewhere 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, whenever the original abductions first started, when they went through the family lines, they were looking for RH negative.
I didn't know what my blood type was until I went in the Navy and they needed it for my dog tags.
That's what I learned too, by the way, when I was
Yes.
in the Navy. That's when I learned about it. But it's a strange thing, and it is strange how many people don't actually know their blood type. People, you should always know your blood type. Even though Rh negative is the universal donor, you should always know your blood type in case you're somewhere that doesn't have Rh
That's
negative.
right. And you need blood quick. You don't
And you
want to
do,
go.
but
What
for
does
some
your
reason,
gut tell you, Joe? What do you think's going on?
I think they're adjusting our population. I think they're changing our population.
In a good way or a bad way?
I want to say it's in a good way. I mean, most of our Rh negative people I meet seem to be pretty even keeled, pretty comfortable people. There's a couple of charts on our website that show you the difference between Rh positive and Rh negative people. They're different in different ways in personality traits. And when I first got involved with this, you could have not convinced me that there was personality traits by blood type. I wouldn't have believed you. If I wouldn't have seen it for myself, I still wouldn't believe it. But now that I've seen it, there's definitely a difference between O positive people and O negative people. There's just a difference in their personality. And the O negative people just seem to be more conscientious about the planet, more conscientious in general, and they seem to really want to change things. But I mean, if they can or not, we know what's going on around the world right now. So whether they can change it, maybe we should find out what Putin is.
Yeah, that's really maybe he doesn't even have any blood.
That's what
Hmm.
I'm thinking. Maybe he's that golden blood, no antigens. I don't know. It's a kind of a scary thing to see that something somewhere, whether it was Mother Nature or an alien, something sent us on a new traveling journey. And in 100,000 years or 200,000 years, our society is going to change. We're going to be a different society. We'll be way more blue and green eyed people than brown. I mean, and everybody knows brown was dominant, it still is dominant, but eventually it won't be.
Do you think mainstream media will pick up on this study?
Every now and then, somebody will call me from mainstream media. I've done NBC once or twice with it. CBS did it once. Of course, Ancient Aliens did it once on Discovery. But it's, I think it's too scary for them because just to put this in perspective, I had done an interview with Rachel Maddow, but not about this, about something else. And when I was there, I was talking with this other guy, and it scared him. I said, well, I'm O positive. My family's going to be pushed out. I said, no. More than likely, as the O negatives grow, you'll start breeding with the O negatives. Your family just will become O negative as it goes on. I said, that's what's going to happen. I said, we're just going to keep breeding backwards until finally we're all O negative or close to O negative. One day it'll be 85% O negative and 15% O positive, or Rh positive, I should say.
We're going to take calls next hour with it, Joe, so make sure you jump on board. Let's talk about the reptilians and the Greys for a moment, Joe. Do they come across as being evil? The reptilians and the Greys are okay?
Well, it's hard to put it on a term because, so if you're one of the ones being abducted, yeah, you might think they're evil. But if you're not, and you're just one of the ones working along with the group, like one of the keepers, no, you don't. So one of the first things we learned, but we were very wrong in the early days. We thought the Greys worked for the reptilians and humans. We found that no, that's not true, that the reptilians and humans are scared of the Greys. The Greys use an organic technology. They meld with their ship, and their ship's alive. It's just a whole different kind of technology than what the reptilians use. The reptilians is weird because if you go to the ancient world, so if you go pre-Christ, almost everybody who talks about the reptilians worships them. All throughout South America, the Middle East, and even in Africa, they worship them as the bringers of life and the bearers of life. Good people, okay? And even the Dogon talk about them in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But after Christ was born, it changed. We seen an emergence of the Greys on the scene, and the reptilians became evil. They were the ones. The serpent, of course, is the one who gave Eve the apple. That story, by the way, is common amongst all of the ancient world, not just amongst the Christians. They come to find out when we started doing our research that this is a common story that the reptilians brought life. There's another story about the Sumerians that were slave race at the time. The reptilians came and interbred with them and enslaved. Now, so everybody who doesn't know this, every human on the planet has a reptilian section in their brain, and we would not be who we are without it.
Oh, that's true. I've always thought, though, the reptilian side of the ETs reminded me of Lucifer, Satan.
Well, they kind of do in some ways. But one of the other things we found out in the last 20 years is they seem to have a caste system. So it looks like there's a warrior caste, a religious caste. There just seems to be 7 or 8 castes. We found out that some of them seem to be winged. Some of them have gills. They have different types of bodies, even though they got a basic build, around 7 or 8 foot tall, probably around 500 or 600 pounds. They differ from piece to piece. So I'm thinking, we always talk about the draconians. That might just be a colony. They may have been a colony here, and they either may naturally change, or maybe they genetically change themselves and live on different worlds. But in our culture, we've heard about winged reptilians, snake type reptilians, definitely gilled reptilians. Things like that seem to be all over. And what's funny about the reptilians is, since they're like the Greys, they only abduct in family lines. They're very protective of their family lines. But if you're outside that family line, you're just garbage to them. You're just trash, nastiness. They don't care about you. You're not part of whatever their excuse me, their project is on their planet. And if you get in the way, they will squash your butt like a bug. The Greys seem to be a little bit different in the fact that the Greys seem to have come here maybe to keep the humans and reptilians from getting into it, because the human aliens are what established the Sumerian colonies. And the reptilians are the ones that were directly interfering with it. So I think the Greys were sent here probably by the light beams to keep them from getting into a fight. They were probably like, look, guys, no, we're not starting any stellar things.
I wonder, Joe, if the ETs that we apparently have from crashed saucers have been blood typed, and I wonder if they're RH negative.
They might be. It's interesting you said that, because one of the things we talk about, 3 types of aliens, 3 types of blood: Greys, reptilians, and humans, A, B, and O. And maybe one of them. Dogon seemed to think maybe it was the reptilians that would bring her life. A lot of people think it's just the Greys. Because of where the time frame is this on, I'm thinking probably whoever gave us that reptilian section in our brain gave us that RH negative. And probably the Greys reinforced it later on. Because I can't find any mention of the Greys pre-Christ. They just don't exist. It seems like you start seeing them in Egyptian texts about 2,800 years ago. You start seeing them all through Samaria and places like that. But before that, they just don't show up. But the reptilians and humans date back as long as we do, if not longer.
And the reptilian part of our brain is in the amygdala, which gives us that fight or flight that, as you just said, without that, we'd be toast.
We'd be a slave race again, is what we'd be. And it's an important thing. And I get, when I'm doing lectures and stuff, people, we don't have no reptilian section of the brain. I say, you got your cell phone? Look it up on the internet. That's all I can tell them. Because it's there. It's part of who and what we are, and it's a big part of who and what we are now. Whether we need to breed it out and become a wimpy race, I don't know. I think it's more about control than it is about getting rid of it. Because as we colonize space, we're going to need that. As we move forward into space travel, we're going to need that. We're going to need that flight or fight, because we don't know what we're going to find out there or what's going to be out there waiting for us. So we're going to need that. We can't go out as just a wimpy race that's scared of everything. That's just not going to work. It's not going to work on this planet.
Have you had anybody in government want information on your blood type study?
Oh God, yes. I've had on that. I've had people contact me on that, and I had 2 senators and 2 senators' aides. Matter of fact, this is a weird story. So I'm in D.C. for something else. I was actually doing a political lecture, and I'm in D.C. and these 2 aides come up to me and said, "Are you the guy who did the blood type study?" And I looked at him and I didn't want to say anything. I was like, "Yeah, I'm the guy who did that." And I'm not going to mention the senator's name on air. I will tell you, he's a very famous senator from Texas. And he said he would like to talk to you. I was like, about what? He said, well, about the blood type study and the aliens. I'm like, really? I said, well, what? So we had lunch at the Washington Press Club, and we discussed it. And while we were there, another senator from New Hampshire showed up. And I was like, okay, I'm thinking now the Fed's coming to get me. I'm getting locked down.
Here we
This is
go.
it.
Yeah.
This is it. But they were very, very interested. And about 10 years earlier, Senator McDonald called me. This was so funny. I got to tell you this story. So I get a phone call from an aide. Says he's Senator McDonald's aide. I hung up. I just hung up. It says BS.
He hung up.
Yeah. 2 days later, I get another call, and I was like, no, I don't believe it. So about a month passes. I get a vanilla envelope comes to my door with a picture of his congressional ID and his driver's license. And I'm thinking, no, no, no. And I ignored it. And I got a couple more calls and I ignored it. Well, I still remember my wife. My wife says, there are two guys in black suits standing at the front door looking for you.
Oh,
Black limousine. I'm like, oh, I'm going. I'm done. It's over with.
the men in black. Here they go.
Senator McDonald, who at the time was in charge of all of our top secret stuff in the country, had a black triangle experience while driving to New Mexico. And someone told him I was a guy to talk to. I had the information on. And I had a lot of information on him at the time. And I gave him everything I had. And I figured, okay, I'm never going to hear from this guy. We went to lunch, and he was a real nice guy. He's an old guy, but a real nice guy. So I gave him all the information I had and said, okay, we're done. So I get a letter from, he said, I got a phone call. He said, Joe, you do have a Class 10 security clearance. I said, yeah, because I used to work all over the Nimitz. He said, I'm going to send you something. And he sends me this big, thick vanilla envelope with the whole entire layout of the SR-3s, the Aurora, and two other craft that we're currently having production. And this was in the 80s and 90s and mid-90s. I was like, well, this was really sweet. And then it was weird. About 2 years later, he just croaked over. I shouldn't say that. He just died. But I've had several people over in the governments lately approach me. And then because I said something with Stephen Bissett a couple of months ago on a radio show about being on board the Nimitz when Reagan came on board.
I remember that.
Yeah, and well, you know, there was a UFO landing when Reagan was there.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so it was. So what happened was I had signed an agreement. Everybody on board who's seen this had to sign their rights away, basically. Well, it was for 33 years. When it ended, I was talking with Stephen. I said, well, I'll talk about it. Not even a week later, a guy shows up at my door with a new security arrangement.
Like you violated something, right?
He said, you're not in any trouble, Joe, but you're going to sign this. You're not going to talk about it anymore. I was like, what? Because, you know, my Class 10 security is for life. Every 4 years, the FBI does a background check on me to make sure I haven't violated anything. This was different. This was separate from that. He showed up at my house, signed. He said, I've already talked to all your friends. He said, I can't use the language he used. And he said, sign it or else. So, you know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to get in a fight with the federal government and the military, so I signed it. So now I can't talk about it until I die. So when I come back, I can talk about it.
Great.
But it's already out there. They didn't pull the archives.
Well, Reagan was a believer, too.
Oh, Reagan was a big believer. And, well, Reagan was interesting because he instituted so many things that you know, Pine Gap, HARP facilities, Star Wars. He gave, 7 speeches where he talked about contact. He was definitely, he knew something. I don't know what he knew, but whatever he knew scared him because, you know, Pine Gap is the Joint British Defense of Outer Space. I don't know what we're defending ourselves from. You know, HARP facilities punching holes all up in the ionosphere with these big, huge lasers. And then Star Wars, I got to go to Los Alamos to see an expedition of one of the Star Wars lasers. And they were superheating these big discs and shooting them into space. It was crazy looking. I mean, these things were just vented, ribbed disc looking things, and they would put the laser on these and then shoot it up into space. Because we weren't using them for shooting down missiles, I think they were going to try to make a launching thing out of them.
Well, listen to this possibility, Joe. Not that the aliens are abducting people who are RH negative, but they're abducting people and turning their blood into RH negative.
It's quite possible, and I can't rule that out in any shape, form, or fashion. You know, I remember that movie Taken, that TV series Taken, and I got to thinking about it, and there were some things that went on in there experiment-wise that would suggest that they might be doing just that. They may be taking children out of the womb. You know, we remember the missing baby syndrome, rearranging their DNA, putting them back in their moms and being born Rh negative.
Right.
And we don't know that they're not. And it does seem like they want to change our society, but they're not taking out the regress, that reptilian section.
Do you have anybody in the study that may have said, gosh, I thought I was O positive, but I ended up being Rh negative?
Actually, we've had several people who seem to have changed blood types in the last 15 years. Even their doctors are confounded by it.
See, there you go.
And I went in and talked to a couple of doctors because I didn't think they were going to talk to, but all of them were willing to talk to me. And I said, well, look, can you explain? He said, no, I can't explain it. He said, all I can tell you is this guy, Jimmy, was born O positive, and now he's O negative. So the letters don't change, but the Rh factor changes. And ladies and gentlemen, in case you didn't know this, Rh negative does not share its common genes with the rhesus monkey like Rh positive does. It's a separate type of blood. It's a very weird thing because RH means Reese's monkey is what it means, and all RH positive people share 2% of their DNA with a Reese's monkey, but the RH negative don't. Why the hell is that? Excuse my language. Why is that? It's what is the change going on here? So you might watch it, George. You might wake up one morning and have a whole different blood type.
It's bingo, but I won't know until I go get checked.
That's true. Until one day you're in the hospital and they're pumping the wrong blood into your veins. They're like, why is he having this reaction? This is his blood type, and then they type it, it's something different. But there has been, I can't tell you how many. I want to say at least 100 cases in the last decade where it seems like the person's blood type changed.
That's amazing. Spell out your website to folks, Joe.
Oh, it's www.icar1.com. You can always find us there. And as far as the radio stuff, just type in my name and it'll bring you right to wherever we're at.
Okay, we're going to come back in just a moment here on Coast to Coast and take final calls with Joe Montaldo. So get ready to make the call. We'll get you on, and we will talk for the next hour about abductions, blood types, you name it, we got it. This hour, we'll take your phone calls. Joe Montaldo with us, and we will be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Joe Montaldo with us. Joe, in your 37 years of research, have you ever seen anything as weird as this blood study type?
Well, there's been some weird stuff going and coming, I ain't going to lie, but the blood type just is still catching me off guard. I mean, we get all these weird things about the Greys and the reptilians and the humans, and over the years, it just adds up so we understand who they are. But this is just different. This was, we can't figure out exactly who started this. Is what's bothering me the most.
And why?
And why? And I'm hoping. I mean, I'm really truly hoping that this is something positive for the planet. Now, granted, you and I won't be here when it's finished, or maybe we'll be reincarnated by then. But regardless, this is still it's ongoing. It seems like it's an ongoing long-term project, at least 100,000 years. I'm trying to think. Somebody's got a plan for us, and it's not us. We didn't have the technology to do this unless we were time traveling and went back and did this. It's not us doing this. It's something else. And I don't think it's Mother Nature because I don't think Mother Nature would have created something that was a baby killer.
No, not at all.
I just don't think she would have done that. So this is something different. And let's be honest. So whenever this occurred 40, 50,000 years ago, 100,000, whatever it was, all that time until recent times, until we found the guy in Australia where we invented the antigen D gene so we could give you a shot so it wouldn't affect your baby. Until then, there were stillborn babies being born all over the place. It just doesn't make sense. And whatever this project is, they must have known sooner or later that we would adjust to the blood type. They had to have, because we did. I mean, in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when we figured out how to give you a shot, so you could. It didn't matter what blood type you were.
In terms of the blood typing, Joe, in the different categories, what does science say about Rh negative?
Well, Rh negative is the universal donor, but more than that, it is the most purest form of blood known to man. It's almost where all of our hematological research comes from. Without it, we would be 100 years behind where we are today, maybe even more than that. It is something that revolutionized what we understand about blood. So for science, this was an excellent thing. Out of the blue, some Rh negative comes along, and bam, now science understands blood much better than they did 100 years ago, 50 years ago, based on this Rh negative, this O negative, actually. No one, when I talk to scientists about this or somebody in the hematological world, I ask them, I said, okay, O negative is only 7% of the world's population. I said, what is it? And they can't answer me. He said, all we can tell you is it's the purest form of blood known to man and is the universal donor. So everybody always tells me that AB negative and AB positive is the rarest blood. In a way, that's true because it's 1.5. But they can take Rh negative. Rh negative can't take anybody's blood but their own. So technically, they're the rarest blood to man because they can only take their blood type. You can't give them any other blood but Rh negative or it'll kill them. But yeah, you can take an Rh negative person, take their blood and give it to anybody on the planet, and they'll live.
And they're fine.
Yeah, it's somebody had to have made this. I mean, it just doesn't seem like an accident. it was almost for society. And then through the wars, it was a great thing because they didn't have to stockpile tons of blood; they could just stockpile Rh negative.
You've probably learned more about blood than you want to know right now, huh?
Oh man, I do. I probably know as much as half the hematologists on the planet. I've talked to so many of them, and what's so interesting about this is when I bring this up to somebody, it fascinates them. They don't like hearing the UFO or the alien word, but even they can't deny it could be a possibility because there's no other explanation. They can't tell you why this blood type started. They just don't know, and they can't tell you why after 2 million years of evolution with our Rh positive and brown eyes and brown hair, we changed out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Let's
Yeah.
go to the phones for you. Let's go to Seattle, Washington. The caller does not want his or her name known, so we call them anonymous. Hello there.
Hello, anonymous.
Hey, Mr. Nori. Good morning, and sir, how are you guys doing? Hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. So my thing is like almost like a comment. It doesn't have nothing to do with like the blood type, but I used to work for LabCorp, and in their in their database they have over 2/3 of American population. They are based in over 100 countries, and their sister company is a pharmaceutical company. So, for example, if you go for your blood work and you get your results in 2-3 days, what do you think happens to the blood work? Some of the tubes and the blood work can last up to 3-5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because you freeze them. So when you go get your blood work, if you're, for example, if you're like type 2 diabetic, so all your blood work is, corresponds to a patient that has type 2 diabetic. So what you become like a patient, number 206 that has diabetic problems. So any medication that needs to be tested on a patient that's, around diabetic. So what they do, they use your blood work as a test patient. And you don't even know about it because 99% of the people don't know about it.
And let me ask you, did you see much Rh negative blood in your studies?
Rh negative, I'm not a hematologist. I'm a lab tech.
Okay.
So I worked I worked for 12 years. And that's basically you send all this blood and then almost none of them gets destroyed. It actually goes to a database because in their database they have 2/3 of the American population, and then on top of that is based in 100 countries. So they're constantly doing tests.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, man, because in case you didn't know this, amongst diabetics, for Rh negative is much lower than Rh positive, and O in general is much lower than A and B. Nobody knows why either. It just is.
Is it conceivable, Joe, that government is doing this Rh negative testing and people think they're being abducted?
Well, in some cases, it could be possible. I mean, some abductions are pretty hard to fake. Our government just don't have those kind of technologies yet. Some, we track, as I knew Melinda Leslie and I came and talked to this about you a long time ago, but we track military abductions on a fairly regular basis. And it's not beyond possibility that they're not trying to figure out what this is or why this is.
Right.
And does it need to be corrected? Is it going to take their power base away from them? But things like diabetes. So, with COVID, people are less prone to get COVID than other people are. People are less prone to get diabetes than other people, and generally they're healthier populations. Don't ask me why. And when I ask the scientists about it, they just say it's because of the antigen gene or this anti or that thing. But in the end, they don't really know.
They don't know.
Don't know why.
Joe in the Bronx. Go ahead, Joseph.
Hey, George, how are you?
Good to hear you, Joe.
Oh, and it's a good segment. I'm enjoying this segment. Joe, would the brain chemistry be changed when the conversion from AO or whatever is made to Rh negative? And what effect would that have on the individual?
Well, I imagine it would change. What effect it would be, That's a good question. We'll probably launch a study just because you asked me that question, man. But it's a tough thing to say because we know that the reptilian part of our brain drives part of us. We know our blood types, being O negative or Rh negative versus Rh positive, also drive our personalities. So I would assume if there was a serious change and it was pushed through your brain, that you would see a significant change in who and what you're. I guess in some cases you could even call it a walk-in. That's how significant your personality would change from one to the other. So like with George, he might become 3 times as hyperactive as he already is. So he's a go-getter to start off, but I can only imagine if he was souped up 3 times faster, what it would be like for him.
Jeez.
And I would think you would see this across the general population if that's what was being done. And I'm not going to rule out that our government hasn't figured out that maybe we should see if what kind of breeding we can do, selective breeding amongst Rh negative people. So maybe they're backbreeding the populations together, the ABs, the Os, the Rh negatives, the O negatives, in the whole 9 yards. They may be breeding just the Rh negatives to see what comes out of it. Because if it's true, like my Air Force buddy told me, the general told me, then it's quite possible that it would be to their benefit to breed what we would call super Rh negative people who had abilities far beyond anything we understand right now. I know we have really good telepaths, really good empaths. What our government wants is telekinesis. Now, I'm pretty sure we don't have any significant power because people like Trump or Biden or anybody for that matter, Putin, if they had the ability to use it, someone with telekinesis, I mean, you could squeeze someone's blood vessel and brain and give them aneurysm, and it would look like a natural death, or squeeze an artery in the heart. Obviously, we don't have world leaders dropping dead around the world, so more than likely we haven't reached that level of technology. But it doesn't mean our government's not working on it.
Well, that's true. We never thought they were working on some of these bioweapons, did we?
Yeah, we didn't. That's true. Hell, for a long time, we didn't even know they were working with remote viewers. We found that, thanks to Ed Dames, we found that out a long time ago. So our government tends to keep a lot of secrets from us for whatever reasons they see fit. And things like this, if they saw that they were any kind of advantage to Rh negative, you can bet some lab somewhere is working on this.
Let's go to first-time caller Lisa in Salt Lake City, Utah. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, and you guys are so speaking my language. I'm an O negative, and he's so spot on everything he's saying personality-wise. I ran a negative blood page when I found out my blood type and the characteristics we all have. It's like I kind of sniff them out. I can sense people with negative blood. It's so weird.
Yeah, all of them say that, by the way. It's a weird
Here's
thing.
a little fun fact, too. A lot of musicians are negative blood types, and did you know the 27 Club, the whole 27 Club were type O negatives?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep. I researched a bunch of it, and yeah, he's spot on about
The 27 Club, Joe, was a handful of musicians who all died at the age of 27.
Damn. Oh, well, hope they wasn't Rh negative. That put them over the edge. But it's quite common. We have if the stats are right, we just went through about 50% of our politicians are Rh negative. So what bothers me is which ones are they? And I'm not going to get into whose name's who, but we have been able to figure some of them out. But we also know that a lot of Hollywood people are Rh negative. So when you see someone with green or blue eyes, somewhere in their bloodline, there's Rh negative, because that's what created the mutation of the green and the blue, was the original mutation of the blood. So that's another thing that's a little weird about this. So green and blue eyes and Rh negative is a mutation. It's not a naturally occurring thing in our bodies. It is a mutation. And it's a mutation that seems to be growing and getting bigger and moving faster. Because when we first did the study, I want to say that blue and green eyes were like 4%. Now they're 18%. And that's just in the 35 years we've been doing the survey. So it's expanding. For whatever reason, it's expanding at a great deal. And we only have limited access because I can't access countries like Russia. I do have access in India. And since our network goes into China, we have a big following in China, so we can actually check there as well. But still, some places in the Middle East, we have limited access. Some places in Africa, we have limited access. Now, South America, believe it or not, they're very into this. So in South America right now is running 50-50 Rh positive, Rh negative, even though 98% are O. They are running 50-50, which is odd because it should only be 15% Rh negative.
Exactly. It still defies logic, doesn't it?
It does. And then, when you get down to the Nazcans and all, we know there was some kind of contact there. I'm pretty sure the Mayans and the Incans and all, I'm pretty sure the Toltecs were probably the original contactees down there. or somewhere along their inherited line they were. And of course, I can't hang to anybody who loved Chihuahua. So I just got to say,
Long Island, New York, we go. Joe's with us east of the Rockies. Joseph, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah. My question would be a couple. One would be these abductions. I don't understand how someone could be abducted to a ship, given the logistics of the ships, how they maneuver. I don't think someone could. That people would be thrown around all over the place. I don't think they could withstand it. So I think there's a gap in what is actually happening. Are these people actually on a ship, or is there another explanation as to how a ship could maneuver like that?
You're thinking of technology based on what we understand. Just in our own ships, which Elon Musk is one of the ones working this, is called inertial dampers. With that, nobody's getting thrown around.
No,
And
or they're strapped down too, Joe.
Yeah, and I would imagine an advanced race has already licked this problem, or they wouldn't be able to travel through deep space. So, when you're talking to speeds faster than light, or even jumping holes, you're going to need some kind of either some type of inertial damper system or something that you're tied down tight to, so you don't get squished every time the ship stops or every time the ship takes off. So that is something I'm pretty sure they've already done, but we've had too many good videos of ships hovering over places. But I'm going to be honest with you, and I've said this 100 times, and this makes ufology people really mad. I don't think non-abductees can see UFOs. Almost everybody I've ever talked to me, the UFO is a trigger memory. Just like in the old days, we used to talk about owls and stuff like this. These are trigger memories. This is to let you know something happened to you. That's the only reason you remember the craft, because they want you to know something happened to you, so they leave a trigger memory for something to go off. Because here's a good one for you. Of course, we all know about the Phoenix lights, hovered over Phoenix for several hours. Only a handful of people have seen it. What, 16,000 out of 2 million? Mexico City, UFO hovered for 24 hours. 1 million people reported seeing it out of 22 million. So New York City, when the ambassador seen the woman being taken out of her house, only a handful of people saw that in a city of 8 million. So I don't think you can just see a UFO unless you've already been touched by one, or they want you to see it. I think their technology is far beyond ours, and if they don't want to be seen, they don't have to be seen. I don't. When people tell me about crashes, and I'm very skeptical about crashes, because one, we wouldn't even let China keep our plane when we crashed it. We were going to go to war over it. So I doubt an alien race is going to let us keep anything that could advance us in those ways.
Unless they dumped it on purpose.
And yes, and I was getting ready to say, unless it's like maybe it's a scout craft, or maybe it's a shuttle, something that's binary that we can learn from, but doesn't have massive weaponry on it.
Exactly.
And that's what Roswell sounded like. It sounded like something, because I've never heard anybody talk about big weapons or anything like that being found. This sounded like a ship that crashed, and because it broke up, it made me think that it had to be something smaller, a shuttle, something like that, because any craft that can do interstellar space is not going to break up and impact. It's going to probably stay intact when it hits the ground. It's probably not going to shatter, because it has to take micrometeorites and all sorts of other things at high speed. So impacting our planet would probably come in one piece. I doubt it would break up like that. So it made me think that more than likely Roswell, if it was an alien, it was probably some type of shuttlecraft or maybe a cargo ship of some kind. And the ET said, well, it's very benign. They can keep it, because if you go back and look at the Roswell paper, 3 days after the report, they put three things in the paper. They put what we would consider aircraft aluminum today, a microchip, and fiber optics, which none of what was invented at the time of the crash. So, but it's all stuff we use standard today. So there is a link bringing it forward. It's just I don't think if they had something with massive weapons on, they were going to let us keep it, because as a species, we're still dangerous. And what would we do if we had an advanced spacecraft with big weapons on it that could fly around the galaxy? Would you trust us with it? I wouldn't.
Well, and there have been great reports of them shutting down missile silos.
Oh, yeah, and there's at least a dozen, or two reports of that, both in the United States and Russia. I wish they'd go shut Russia down right now, but I guess that's not going to happen. But they don't really seem to interfere with our politics, but they do seem to interfere with our population.
I mean, would they stop an asteroid, Joe, if it was headed this way?
I don't know. I know they wouldn't stop a nuke, and we know they didn't stop Chernobyl or Fukushima.
Right, that's true.
So I don't. For them, I think you got to look at it from their point of view. If we irradiate the planet, they have the ability to clean it up. We may not, but they do. So we would just be handing them over a perfectly good planet. And I'd like to reiterate this to everybody: we're not killing the planet; we're killing ourselves. The planet will survive long after we're gone, even if we
and regenerate.
Yeah, and regenerate, and we'll be long gone and dead. So people, you need to keep that in mind. It's not the planet we're killing ourselves. So if y'all want to live and be around a million years from now, you better straighten out your act. And I'm hoping that's part of the RH negative thing. I hope that's what's driving, because a lot of my RH negative friends I know are very, very in tune with the planet. They want to see in mankind. And Joe, and you know, a lot of them, I hate to say it like this because I'm going to catch flack for this, they're kind of new agey. They're very brilliant, but they want to see us survive as a species. They want to see us colonize. Hell, I want to go live with Elon Musk on Mars. You know, I heard
just don't put a Neuralink in your head, Joe.
Oh, wait, I don't know about no Neuralink.
You don't have to do that. We're going to take a quick break, Joseph, and come back and take final calls with you in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back. Our final segment with Joe Montaldo as we talk about his study, a blood study. Joe, will the members of ICAR come up to some conclusions based on the study?
Yeah, we've come to the conclusion that somebody's definitely interfering in our society.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, you know, for the most part, we really do think that it is to move us forward as a society. But yeah, I hate saying it like that, because everybody I know with RH positive thinks, well, are we being left behind? I said, no, you're being bred out. There's a difference. And what I mean by that is you're not being left behind. Eventually, we will just breed out. Just as we started as RH positive 2 million years ago, you know, a couple 100,000 years down the line from now, we're just going to be RH positive. We're just going to breed ourselves out into a different type of species, more telepathic, probably more honest, more open, just a different kind of species. And there's definitely a difference in personality between RH positive and RH negative people.
Amazing.
It's a strange thing, you know. Somebody always gets offended when I say this, because it's not meant to be that way. I'm not the one who did this. I'm not even the one who started this. And frankly, it took me 10 years before I even believed it. I had to see just tons and tons and tons of data. And then I had to have several hematologists help me out to make me understand that there is something going on in our society. And it does seem to be that slowly but surely and methodically, the RH negative is just breeding in more every year. Seems to be a little bit more, seems to be a little more, seems to be a little bit more. At this rate, in less than 1,000 years, it will have, it'll be at least 50% blue eye and green eye, which is really weird since they didn't even exist that long ago. And I mean, just recently, as far as just 20 or 30 years ago, they were only 4% of the population.
It is bizarre, isn't it?
It is. It just seems like we just keep moving forward and it keeps going on. And for some reason, science is, or I don't know if they're ignoring it or just not saying anything to us about it. I can't be the only one who found this. I mean, that's impossible, especially since I turned it over to at least 3 major hematologists. Somebody else has got to be tracking this besides us.
Are the hematologists baffled too?
They are, because they don't know what it is. They don't know how it happened. They'll come up, they'll try to razzle-dazzle you for a little while. But when I put it right to them, I said, okay, explain to me why Mother Nature did this. And they can't. They're just baffled as we are. And they don't understand why it keeps growing. You know, originally when I talked to them, they said, oh, it's going to plateau at 15%. But now it's moved from there.
It's going up higher and higher.
And it just keeps growing. And no one can come up with a coherent explanation why, other than something or someone interfered in our society. And obviously, it's not us. We didn't have this technology 100,000 years ago. It's got to be somebody else.
Let's take final calls for you, Joel. Let's go west of the Rockies. Jeff's with us, Santa Rosa, California. Hey, Jeffrey.
Hey, guys. I was listening to the RH negative thing, and it seems to me that gene editing has a lot of programming in it that has to do with green and just mind control type stuff. And I couldn't help but think that the research I've been doing on the Pleiad Galactic specifically they've written that they're going to breed us out of existence into bodies that we no longer will be able to inhabit, you know, reincarnate into, and they'll have them to do with as they please. So my question to you is, with your clearance, and you don't have to answer this question, can you get Pleiaran or Taigetan or whomever blood types that our government might have in a dungeon someplace, or other galactic entities that we've captured through our space programs, and compare it with your information to get a better idea of what's going on?
Well, that's an interesting question, because a couple of people I've talked to about this, both in the government and out of the government, seem to think that the 3 major races that visit here are the 3 blood types we carry today. And then that the Greys are the ones that instituted the RH negative, probably brought O and O negative to us. They do think one, like the planes, they do think are either A or B, and the reptilians are one of the other ones. And that's what they think. They think that that's where our three blood types came from, because they originally interbred with us. Because the Sumerian stories talk about the seven creations of man, with the subspecies of us being the last creation, meaning that they were just like us, except they weren't. They didn't resist. They would plow the fields, procreate, do whatever they did, and then there were stories about the reptilians used to come in and steal the women and rape the women and have children. Now, when I first heard this story, I thought the children being born were disfigured, looked like reptilians, but that's not what was going on. They were this incarnation of who's here today, us. Once they entered that reptilian section into the slave race, it became the aggressive race that's here today, us, meaning us. And then at that point, I guess the Greys and the reptilians and humans said, "Uh-oh, we may have made a mistake here." And ever since then, they've been trying to correct it. Because think of it this way. Technically, we have all three of the alien races' blood in us. So eventually, one day in 100 million years, we're going to surpass them. Do you want the species that's here today in deep space more advanced than the three most advanced races in the galaxy? Is that what they want? No, that's not what they want. They want us to be an equal race, but not a race that's going to go out and conquer and destroy and destroy everything. So they don't want us to be a child race again, and they don't want us to be an incompetent race, but they don't want us to become this race that we could be. I mean, according to most of them, we will evolve into light beings in a billion or so years. Do you really want us with this state of mind evolving into that kind of energy and power? No, you don't. So you need something to correct it. So when you talk with the government, more than likely they already know, because they had reptilians and Greys and a couple others captured. So they probably already know what the blood types are. They're probably just trying to work them backwards to see what we can move forward with. And right now, it just happens to be the RH negative is the one that seems to be changing our species for the, well, we'll just say for the better and leave it at that. So like what you're talking about, if they were trying to breed us out, the Greys may have stepped in and changed it so that they couldn't. So now they're breeding a separate species that will be resistant to the other species.
A little internal battle going on there, huh, Joe?
Probably is a little bit. Well, the government's always said there's been some kind of stuff going on ever since, what was it, Valiant Thor? Which, guys, I'm not a big believer of Valiant Thor, so don't write to me about him, but there was something else going on. The human aliens, from every description I've got from anybody who's been abducted, look somewhat like us, but their heads are deeper than ours are. They're taller than us. They're heavier than us. They have 6 fingers, 6 toes. They look a lot like us, but they don't even breathe the atmosphere, because originally in the original Sumerian stories, they said they built 2 great white dome cities because they couldn't live in our atmosphere of our planet. That race created a subspecies of themselves, which created the subspecies of us. So we can track that back pretty well. I mean, there's pretty good evidence about that. There's pretty good information about that. And thanks to the Middle East, there is a lot of solid evidence about the human and reptilian aliens, but the Greys don't come in until later, and mostly throughout the Americas and a part of the Middle East. So I guess, we always said the Middle East was a cradle of civilization. Maybe they were right. Maybe that's where the aliens first started our society at and moved forward from. Or interbred with ever ape man they found walking around the planet. But the Sumerians are quite clear in the 7 creations of man, with our subspecies being the last creation where the reptilians intervened and created the species that's here today. But today we know that the reptilians, the humans and Greys, DNA is in us, because that's how they track us. So they only abduct in family lines, all 3 of them. That's all they do. There's no such thing as a first-time abductee or last one-time abductee. That's not true. And Travis and I had this very same conversation when I freaked him out on air one night about it. It just doesn't happen. You may not remember anything else, but they only abduct inside of family lines. So we can tell they're manipulating the family lines because they only abduct inside of family lines.
That's interesting.
So RH negative is just another tool for them to whatever they're trying to change in us subtly is one of their tools, because for some reason they can't just come right out and do it. I don't know if it's because we'll rebel or whatever councils out there forbids it. No one really knows why, but they only interfere X amount. Like we were talking earlier, they didn't stop Fukushima, they didn't stop Nagasaki, they didn't stop any nukes on the planet whatsoever. They have warned us because they've stopped our nuclear arsenals, but they haven't stopped us from using them, and they haven't stopped us from blowing up. Like I said, Fukushima and Chernobyl and places like that. They didn't help us clean them up.
And thank God they didn't use them on us.
Yeah, I know. But it seems like it was a warning that we just ignored. And I guess after that point, it comes up to us whether we're going to destroy ourselves or not. And I don't think they're going to stop us if we do. I think they're going to be like, well, we warned you. We tried to help you out, you dumb humans. Well, whoever's left, we'll just deal with. And we'll go from there. I don't think they feel like they should stop us. Probably because no one ever stopped them. You know, it's just the course of evolution. And if our evolution is extinction, I don't think they're going to stop that.
Let's go to Wayne in Tacoma, Washington. Hi, Wayne.
Good evening, gentlemen, Sir George and Joe.
Hi there.
People were asking, Joe from New York was asking, I don't understand how these people can be, not smashed and thrown around inside these craft moving so fast. And really, the explanation is quite simple. And the engineer Salvador Pass from the Navy Warfare Department, who patented the portable nuclear fusion device that powers the underwater aerial device that the Navy has also patented that's gravitational. And think of it as an Earth. It actually is an Earth-type device that has a tremendous feel about it. And whether it's traveling slow or super fast, and the strongest explanation I could give you of a picture of this is the largest UFO that's ever been seen was one coming directly through our sun. That was a huge craft of a cubic shape. And these don't have to be aerodynamic. They can be any shape. And they have gravitational control with a force field around them. And, and the power to go through the sun in a matter of a nanosecond, no problem. And the same thing for any other planet. So you just imagine that power.
Well, NASA had gotten in trouble because they had one of their sun cameras had taken 4 pictures, but looked like to be cubes sitting equal distance from each other. So they tried to say it was lens flare, and then they tried to say it was something else. And then right outside of Jupiter, they had the same 4 cubes. Had nothing to do with their camera. It was a whole different camera. As a matter of fact, it was a satellite. So NASA was just, after that, I noticed they dropped the whole thing. Now, whatever it is out there, they're huge. Anything that you can see up against the sun, is massive. Probably 3 or 4 times the size of our moon at least. Bigger than Mercury for sure. So whatever these craft are, and you're right, they do kind of look like the Borg ship, the ones you're talking about. I've seen them on 3 or 4 occasions. I mean, in pictures, and they do look like a giant Borg cube, just that don't seem to. The gravity of mass doesn't seem to affect. I guess they're too big to get near our planet. That's because people used to always tell me about Naribu coming close to Earth at 5 times the size of Earth. Well, we know that's not true because it would have crushed our planet.
That's right.
It would have killed everything on it. It would have just distorted and destroyed our planet in ways we can't even understand. Maybe that's what the asteroid belt is Naribu, because it's 5 times the size of Earth. But things like this, we do know are out there because we've got pictures of them.
Let's go to Diana in Antelope Valley, California. Hey, Diana, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. I dream every night, but I'm really going to dream tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, this is fantastic. I'm RHA negative. It's about 4% of the population. And about a year and a half ago, I received a letter from a lab in Texas where my family lives. And they wanted to keep my blood for future research. I still have the letter.
Wow.
And so I signed it and returned it. It said to help people, for certain research or whatever.
Sure.
The short letter. So I returned it. But also, I've always felt like I was a makeup baby, reconciliation, 6 years after the 3rd sibling. My birthday's 9/11. I've always felt I've been born like 20 years too late for my time.
Oh,
I love the big band swing. I love the poodle skirts. I was born in 58. And it's like when I walk into a room around people, it's like I have an antenna on my head. It's just a really strange experience I've learned to live with. So being A negative, and I have green eyes, and I have sandy brown hair.
You fit the mode.
I'm serious. So, yeah, I got that letter, and I just signed and returned it back. But, yeah, A negative, RHA negative.
It's everywhere, Joe. We've only got a minute left, but it seems to be all over the place.
It is. It's out there, people. And just remember, just because you're RH positive doesn't mean you're not a contact date. That's all I need to tell you. I don't want to leave anybody out in this conversation today.
Do these people who claim to have the RH negative factor, do they have strange dreams? Do they tell you that?
Actually, most of them are very in control of their dreams. They do a lot of dream weaving, which means sharing dreams with other people, but they're very in control of their dreams. So when they go to bed, they program themselves for what they want to dream about. They change their dreams while they're in it. They don't really have nightmares because they have complete control of their dreams, which is odd for most people. Most people cannot control their dreams. They think they can, but most of the time it turns out to be something else. But these people seem to do it quite easily. It's just another part of who and what they are. It's a strange group out there, and it keeps growing. And I don't know if I should be scared or happy, George, at this point.
Is the study complete?
It'll never be complete. All of our studies are always ongoing. As long as the sites are up, they will always be there. The blood type study is now currently 20 years old. The origin, the gray and reptilian studies are about 25 years old. And as long as I'm alive and as long as the sites are up there, you can go take the studies anytime you want. They're an ongoing project until we can at least get some idea of what this is.
Keep in touch with your new book, okay?
Oh, well, I'll get in touch with y'all. And thanks, George.
Thank you, Joe. You take care of yourself. Amazing. His website, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. It is ICAR1, the number one, ICAR1.com. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladisor, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, Tim Banal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.
Good. And it's a really good step in your career. It can help you move forward. I'm not going to say everybody. I did see, for some reason, it seems a little bit easier for the illustrators and the writers coming off the win. Both years I was asking still illustrators to pick up jobs while I was there. Writers is a little bit harder, but still several writers are out there doing that. Well, hell, one of them, Kevin, won the award and then put a trilogy out. And it's got it published now. So it just shows what a little award can do to help you out. But it is mind judged, people. And trust me, I know this for a fact because I toured people up for a couple of years about, oh, you're full of shit. I don't believe it's real. Oh, man. We're going to talk to Sean because Sean's a winner from there. Not a recent one, but a winner, but still. They told me, oh, no, Joe, it's fine, judge. Nope. It gets things, all the judges don't know what color you are, what sector you are, what nothing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. How do you get in there? You got to slip somebody $500,000 just to get your story in there. Which none of that is true, by the way. But it all turned out to be very nice. I will say this: if you do win, they're going to work the living hell out of you. You're going to get to meet all kind of famous people and all kind of people who can change your career, but you're going to work the hell out of you. But anyway, we have Sean Patrick Haslett. It's nice. Sean, how have you been, man?
I've been doing great.
Staying busy.
Yes, as the world's been staying busy too. Like I think the last time, or I guess about a year ago or so, we talked about Weird World War III, which is that anthology that was about the U.S. versus the Soviet Union. Like, what if they had fought a World War III? And it's like, about a year and a half later, we're getting pretty close. Yeah, we're getting pretty close.
Well, we are. And what What year did you win that Right to the Future? 30,
2017.
26. So what was that? 36? No, 35, huh? Just
Uh,
trying to think which book.
33, volume 33.
All right. I'm just making sure I got it. You know, I buy and give away a lot of these books, and they send me a lot of them. I give a lot of them away, and I get them. Well, all the ones behind me are all autographed, so they're not getting given away. But still, people, I gotta go through a lot of work to get them damn autographs. Huh? It's like a nightmare in there when they do the book reveal. And I'm telling you what, this year wasn't that bad because they only had half as many. The year before last, they had winners for 2 years. Watching them signing books was like comedy gold. Every log jams out. It was see people. Each one's got to sign their own story and their own artwork, so it gets kind of Some of the writers are faster than others. Obviously, some have better speeches. It's just hilariously funny. Not making fun, people. If y'all won, I'm all for everybody who won out there. But it was great. It was just if y'all can get out, you should go. John and Emily will take really good care of you, and everybody wants their services will treat you like gold. I mean, there's a woman named Joan who's like the whirlwind. If you've ever watched Dune, she is the whirlwind. I mean, this woman stops. I don't even, she doesn't even catch her breath. But everybody's good. I've talked to everybody out there many times. I aggravated the hell out of a lot of them, walking around camera in their face, their phone in their face, microphone in their face. I'm not going to be rude, but I want a piece. I wanted to push them. I wanted to see if they get angry or if they get mad or if they say something other than that's my job. I mean, that's what I go from press, man. I mean, that's what I'm doing. But I mean, you met him, Sean. What do you think, man? Before we get into what we're here to talk about tonight, what do you think? Crazy bunch of people over there.
Yeah, like they're all extremely hardworking, and they put together one of the best, if not the best, writing event every year, or at least like writing awards ceremony. Even if you've been to like like Nebula Awards or Hugo Awards, they're nothing in comparison to the pageantry that they put together in kind of the L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future contest awards. So, I mean, hats off. It's really, I mean, you're in Hollywood. It's a real Hollywood event.
They be on the limos and drop you off and put you on the red carpet for 2 hours, and everybody in the mama presses out there, snapping pictures, talking to you, and then you get to go do the gala for 2 hours, and the good day. The only thing this year was that they turned the air conditioner off because they didn't want being picked up in the taping. That's you gotta do in October. You gotta do that again. It's great, people. I mean, it gets me is how professional everybody is, because a lot of these are first-time winners. They've never really been exposed to this kind of television before, or this kind of audience. Standing on a live stage in front of people can be unnerving for a lot of people. But they all get up there and they give this acceptance speech, and they really hold it together. I'm surprised they make it all week with all the work they put up through. It's nonstop for these people. It's like an intense training course, ladies and gentlemen. But if you get it, all the writers I talked to really, really enjoyed it. All the illustrators as well. They have some great illustrators and great writers. And like I was telling them, there's a guy in New Orleans hiring 100 people right now in the gaming industry looking to bring gaming to New Orleans. So a lot of jobs at 100 people at $100,000 each to start. And I just don't know going to be programmers, but I guarantee a lot of them are going to be story writers and artists. So I would definitely check into it, of course, John. So, Sean, we talking about World War III last year. Now it's looking like we're in a picture where, if the orange guy was still in office, I wouldn't be worrying about World War III. This probably wouldn't even going on because he made Putin nervous for some reason. But this Biden guy, which I don't really hate or dislike, because he hasn't, other than driving gas prices up, he's really not on my list that hard. It's
right.
well, I mean, he's not the best with economy, but still, he's not the worst president we've ever had. He's not the best president we've ever had either. He does make me a little nervous because Putin and Xi Jinping don't seem to be scared of Biden. They seem to be scared of Trump. They don't seem to be scared of Biden. So I'm a little worried because they may push it a little further with thinking Biden won't. And I don't know if he would or wouldn't. Yeah, it's hard to say. Would this guy go the extra mile? I mean, already it seems like he's the perfect one for you. So Poland wants to send them a bunch of their own planes, well, a bunch of Russia's planes they want to send to. We said no, but yet we're going to send them a bunch of helicopters. What's the difference?
My understanding is the aircraft that they want to send think they're like MiG-29s or something like
yeah,
that.
something like that. Yeah.
They're, and again, I haven't looked too deeply into this, but they're much older Russian aircraft, and at the end of the day, they wouldn't. Not only would they not make much of a difference, but they would probably, um, you know, accelerate the loss of Ukrainian pilots. So the other issue too is like, another question people might have is, well, why don't we just send them M1 Abrams tanks? Um, and again, there's nuances behind things like that, because M1 Abrams is a much more expensive tank than, say a T-72. They're, the parts would have to come, from the U.S. We have to supply that. Whereas for T-72s, the parts are readily available everywhere in Eastern Europe. And then there's just the logistical footprint of an M1 Abrams is so much more complex and expensive. Because it drains like gallons to the mile, right? Like 1 mile, just to move 1 mile to consume, I don't know, something crazy like 25 gallons, right? So it's not like 25 miles per gallon; it's like 1 mile per 25 gallons or something like that. So you're dealing with this massive logistical footprint. So the way that you have to look at this fight is it's kind of the politics of good enough, the politics of getting the right equipment to the Ukrainians in as much mass as possible and in a way that they don't need a ton of training time to get up to speed. They can just use it right away. So javelins are perfect examples of that. The NLAW that the British have, another example of that. It sounds like the Switchblade, these kind of automated suicide bombing drones, are also, fairly easy to configure and train people on. And what they do is, my understanding is, you send them up and they just loiter for a while until they find a target, and then they just dive on top of the target. So it would be ideal for this Donbass offensive that the Russians actually just started today, by the way. I think they started moving into they've been in the Donbass, but the last big push before May 9th, which is the Russian Victory Day, celebrating Germany. Like, that's the key day that Putin has to show some results. So he's going to kind of throw everything at the Ukrainians in the southeast, as soon as and as fast as possible. I think he has kind of 3 kind of operational objectives. The first is to subdue Mariupol. That, I think they've narrowed the Azov battalion down to, or cornered them at this steelworks plant, which it's a massive plant, but that's, they were yesterday, or a day to 2 days ago, the Russians gave them a surrender or die ultimatum, and the Ukrainians obviously rejected the surrender. So that's ongoing. That's kind of the, once and if the Russians are able to subdue Mariupol, the secondary, or the next big phase is going to be focused on closing the salient at Severodonetsk. It's hard. I can't pronounce it properly. Which is the salient where there's Ukrainian forces that the Russians are trying to encircle with a pincer movement in the east, in the kind of Donbass region. And then the third operational objective that he likely has is to seize Odessa. And the reason that he needs to, and that might be kind of a bonus, I don't know if he's going to be able to accomplish that aim, especially since the Ukrainians sank the Moskva, right, with their Neptune
That's just
missiles.
embarrassing. Yeah, no, that was just embarrassing, is what that was.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, the Ukrainians had the capability, and they pulled it off. So that's going to make things a bit harder in kind of getting to and seizing Odessa. But if Putin is able to capture that far, he ends up strategically denying the Ukrainians access to the Black Sea. And then, if he were to stop there, declare victory, and then go home, he wins. And the reason he wins is by cutting off the Ukrainian economy from the Black Sea. He can prevent, he can put a damper on their economy, weaken them, because that's typically where and as you know, the Ukrainians have a huge, are huge suppliers of grain worldwide. So if he does that, then all he needs to do is just kind of declare a victory, negotiate a separate peace with the West to get sanctions done, and then he just bides his time. The fact that the Ukrainian economy would suffer would be an obvious impact of this because of the denial of access to the Black Sea. And all he has to do is wait, and he can either wait until the current leadership, there's an election, and then he can kind of try to influence the election by cheating or doing whatever Russian dirty tricks he decides to do with the FSB and bribing people, taking advantage of corruption, and then just gets a result that he likes, and then in the long run he can kind of either neutralize or control Ukraine. So that's where I think what his end game is. The thing about Putin is, what people are conflating is the utter incompetence of the Russian military with Putin's ability to be a strategist. And at the end of the day, if I believe that my military was competent, and I believe that my intelligence services were providing me with an accurate situation of what's going on in Ukraine, I would have done the exact same thing that Putin did, right? Which was aim for a decapitation strike of the Ukrainian regime. And the reason it failed was not because it was a bad strategy. The reason it failed is, the assumptions that Putin used to come up with that strategy were dead on arrival. And those, the two primary assumptions again are what my people are telling me true? Is what my people are telling me true? And can my military pull this off? Which, I've
been disappointed by the Russian military. I mean, first off, I remember the first 2 weeks. So you got a 40-mile long line of tanks. Now, if that would have been anybody but Ukraine, we'd have been them out. We just had just 2 warthogs, and it would have been nothing left but a long line of destruction. And we wouldn't even try it. I mean, it wouldn't even be a big thing for us. So I'm thinking, I said, I know Putin watched this, one of the biggest armies in the world in less than 6 months in Iraq without any real effort. And I'm thinking, dude, what are you doing? You've got a lot of the same weaponry we do. What the hell is going on here? And, he got air superiority, in a week, right? Well, semi-air superiority because they keep shoving javelins up his butt. But other than that, he seems to have a sort of air superiority there. But he doesn't seem to know how to use it. He's got the whole entire Black Sea. He does seem to know how to use it. It's almost like he's scared to really push the Russian military. He's scared they're going to break down or if they're going to be seen as incompetent. Really, truly, I mean, you've got a 40-mile thing of tanks rolling around Kiev, and you can't even take Kiev. I'm thinking there's something wrong here. Now, we're on General 8 now, right? The butcher series we have now is what it's called. We're on General 8. I mean, how do you lose 7 generals in a war that ain't even a war? I don't know what to even think about that. I mean, the guy who used the cell phone, I'm thinking to myself, you're a general. You can't get through to Russia, to Moscow, so you pick up your cell phone knowing they're tracking these cell phones. You make a call, what do? They send a missile right to you. I'm thinking, really, dude? I mean, what kind of general were you again? It scares me to think that Russian military can be this incompetent. It's got to scare China, too, because China relies on them as the military to help keep the U.S. at bay. And right now, the U.S. is laughing its ass off going, dude, you'd be a fight for us. You'd have to use nukes because without them, you wouldn't stand a chance. So, I mean, for China, it's got to be a little embarrassing, too. That's why they put all the nest eggs. It's just, I'm with you. I don't think Putin's been getting the whole truth. I think he did some things differently. If he was one, he's got a pretty decent Air Force. I mean, he could shift a big chunk of the air for it and just basically fly wing to wing across the country and start leveling. He hasn't done that. I mean, there's things that worry me though, because if he gets in a bind, he may use something like mustard gas or a low yield, 2 kiloton nuke somewhere to end the war. Because I mean, he drops a 2 kiloton nuke. What's Ukraine going to do? Surrender? I mean, what else choice do they have? I mean,
I think
probably surrender. But
I think in private discussions, like peer to peer between the American and Russian sides, I think the U.S. government has made it very clear to. And again, this is just speculation on my part, but I think the U.S. has made it very clear that if the Russians overtly use chemical weapons or low yield tactical nuclear weapons, and it's obvious, right? Because the Russians can, are pretty shifty when in terms of their use with like Novichok was like a new thing that they used in the past that nobody had ever seen before. They'll provided that we can verify that they've used the chemical weapons. I think what we likely have told Putin's people in private, use any of these weapons against the Ukrainians and we can prove it, we will enter the conflict and start destroying Russian combat power in Ukraine. And I think that's all we need to say, because based on what we've seen in the initial days of the conflict, I think we could probably accomplish that task within a month.
Oh yeah, I agree. We've got enough support in Europe right now that it wouldn't be. I mean, between us and our allies, I don't think it'd be a big deal to take most of Russia out of there and within a month. And I don't know if Russia would want to put any more troops or planes in, because that's just losing. That's a losing battle for them. I mean, all they would be doing is expending materials. So they couldn't win, so they would just be loot tanks. Oh, by the way, yes, Jeffrey, thank you for that. The Mi-17 helicopter is not going to be sent to the Ukraine for some reason. The Biden administration backed that.
Really?
Yeah.
The Mi-17 is the HIP, right? Like the transport helicopter?
Yeah, it's basically it carries some light weaponry, some rockets on it, but nothing major. It's just, I think it was 17,000-pound cargo helicopter or something. He pulled out a send them. I don't know why. I understand why he didn't send the Soviet MiGs, because for 2 reasons. I agree with Sean said earlier, they're kind of ancient and it would be easily shot. Even though for strikes, like when we were talking about those lines of tanks, it would have been a great piece of equipment. That's a little bit different. That's more of a direct attack on Russia. We're funding them with planes that can see helicopters or cargo planes that you can attach missiles to. We can't have if they stuck missiles on there. Not our fault. We're just sending them cargo. For some reason, he pulled that out. And I noticed a lot of the other package I see on this list here, a lot of this is World War II era crap. I mean, don't get me wrong. Things like houses, 150 millimeter houses will work against a lot of things. I mean, they'll rain hell on you all day long. But really, true, we don't really, our own military usually don't use weapons like that. We have sophisticated drones and all kind of other little creepy weapons we got now. We've got robotic weapons. The United States is a whole different category than it was in its last 2 wars. So if you ever see us really deploy in a real force deployment, you see all kind of new weapons like you will see. They'll probably, as a matter of fact, thanks to Putin, we're getting the railguns back. We're taking the railguns off the Zimwalt destroyers because I think it's $1 million a round or something. Have you ever seen the original Zimwalt with her two railgun is a beast. So this thing's going through what is it? Bikini Atoll. It's got some old World War airships left over from all the times we nuked them. They're all floating out there, right? This thing comes cruising on about 30 miles away, and just opens fire. It just basically just decapitates every ship out there. It's the top of. There's no way you're going to stop these things. They're going too fast, and they're too solid. You're not even going to shoot them down with missiles, or they're too small. Shooting missiles and light armor is not going to hurt any. It's like cutting through the top of a ship with butter. So they decided to show you they had a frame for something they were building. I guess they decided to scrap. This thing shredded it like it was. I'm telling you, these guns alone get close to any navy. They don't even need any missiles, and you can see the Zimwalt. The Zimwalt is, I think, it identifies as a speedboat. That's how little it looks on radar. It's radar crossing. So you're not even really going to know it's there until it's too late. And I'm telling you, you did not want to mess with this, and not including all the other weapons it has on board. But the destroyer with, I think, only 170 people. Put this in perspective, the World War II ones were usually somewhere around 2,500 to 5,000, depending on what kind of destroyer it was or battleship. I mean, the carriers today hold 5,500. Just to put it in perspective, this thing's sailing around with only, it's got all kind of systems on it that rebuild themselves, recreate work cells, repair themselves. This is definitely state of the art. It is definitely nobody wants to be tangled with this thing. I remember when Xi Jinping seen it the first time anybody ever seen it in public. They had a picture of Xi Jinping, right? He's watching it on TV. You just see his eyes go, "Oh shit, what is this thing? Where did this thing come from?" Immediately, he's out there talking about hypersonic missiles. And to help people understand what a hypersonic missile is, you do, people, in case y'all didn't know this, all ballistic missiles are hypersonic missiles, all of them. I just wanted y'all to understand that. It's not that we don't have them, we just have these little mini ones that they got, which, from what I understand, is not very far off. Cruise missiles at hypersonic speeds are just deadly. You can still shoot them down. The problem with this is they want you to think you can't shoot them down. Yeah, if you're like 10 miles, you're probably not going to shoot it down. But if you shoot just like we shoot a cruise missile, you have plenty of time to shoot it down. Just because it's traveling at 5,000 instead of 3,000 doesn't mean you can't shoot it down. You just got to be a little bit more accurate. I just don't like about hype. Yeah, guys just went in the Navy and all of this stuff. And it's not quite what everybody's made it out to be. But for a close range weapon, like up against a shore or close to a ship, it'd be deadly. There'd be no stopping it. It would already be. But the problem Russia has, like everything else, to date, since 2014, Russia has attempted to launch no less than 71 ballistic missiles. Of only 2 got off the ground. Obviously, they've got issues because they've been around. These are Soviet weapons. At least ours are a little bit newer. Not much, mind you. In all fairness, I don't know if I was going to fare any better. There has been failures on our side as well. Not as many, but still. I mean, these weapons have been sitting around for 30, 40, 50 years. You don't know what's going to happen when you hit the button. You might just go blue, not do anything. May blow up on a pad. You just don't know until it's just something we shouldn't be relying on. At least George Bush decided to develop what do you call it, the planet killer. 200 kilotons. Yeah. So basically, it's a hemisphere killer is what it is. It pretty much ripped the hemisphere off the top of the planet. You Aussies might survive, but the rest of us would be melted. I don't know why we need weapons like that. Sheer destruction. I guess it is just sheer destruction, isn't it? See, that's what scares me. What does Putin have in his arsenal that we don't know about? What do you think he's hidden weapons?
He's got some nasty chemical weapons. I know that. I can't really talk about them, but he's got some nasty, things there. They still have, tactical nukes. We pretty much removed them from our arsenal years ago. So I think the Russians see it as just an, like an escalation, like staircase, basically. Whereas we see it's kind of more of an analog view of the world, where it's a continuous line of escalation, where we see it as digital, right? It's either no nukes or nukes, right?
Yeah,
and
real nukes or no nukes, yeah.
And that's kind of it's not. I mean, it's not necessarily a problem. It's safer for the planet to be that way, but we can also escalate much faster than they can, right?
Yeah,
we go to 0 to 1 in half a second. So I don't think this will result in any nuclear exchange. Although the Russians have been playing it pretty fast and loose. So they flew 2 Sukhoi 24 aircraft over the Swedish island of Gotland, and they were said to be carrying nuclear weapons on board.
Yeah, and that's the reason they joined NATO.
I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well,
that's super.
I remember when I got the phone call. He said, "Joe, Scandinavian countries joining NATO. What the fuck is going on?" He says, "World War III starting." I said, "What are you talking about?" I turn on TV and sure, I'm like, "If you're dumb enough to fly a nuke over the top." See, that's one of the things I don't understand about Putin here. He's bitching about NATO. All he did was make NATO wake up. Now NATO was snoozing on overdrive, just cruising along, not even thinking about Russia as a threat anymore. We were more worried about China, and even China we weren't really worried about, because China wants to be rich like the United States. This nuclear war is not conducive to being rich. So we weren't really thinking about this, and then here comes Putin, going to wake up the whole planet. Now all of Europe's flipped out. They're spending more money on NATO. NATO's deploying troops along the borders now, which we haven't done since the Cold War. At one time we had 300,000 troops in Germany. Now we're talking about putting them back there. And I'm like, man, come on. I mean, I think last I heard we were down like 50,000 over there. So that was a big drawdown. But it looks like they're going to put them back now. And we're talking about deploying troops in other places, in Poland and other countries. Before America knows, we're going to have 1 million troops deployed again.
Yeah,
a huge army, because you remember this, ladies and gentlemen, when we deploy 1 million, we have to keep 1 million at home. So that means we have to double the size of our military every time we do this. So at one point, our military was huge. It was spread out all over 3 to 5 million, and it finally got under control after the Iraq wars and downsized it because we didn't really think there were any threats other than hotspots. I'm going to change that and make us have to escalate again. And it's just a waste of our money. We could be spending it on something else. I'm with Elon. I'm ready to go to Mars, man. Let's stop trying to blow shit up on Earth. Let's go to Mars. I don't know if you heard Elon say this. This was great. Ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk kind of reminds me of one of the James Bond movies, Moonraker. The guy who went up in space, was going to wipe out the Earth because he wanted to make a perfect thing. So he wants to go there and establish his own colony with his own rules. Okay, that's fine. I can understand that. Then he's talking about establishing several colonies with their own rules under Elon Musk and developing weapon systems that can deploy to deter the United States and Russia from coming there without permission. I was like, wait a minute, fool, wait a minute. Dictator, what the hell's going on here? Things like that bother me because Elon's the kind of person that can pull this off. Yeah, it's amazing that one man can pull this off, but this guy can actually pull it off. And if he gets Bezos or what's his name on the same side with him, ain't no stopping these guys. I said this when I first started doing radio 25 years ago. I used to preach this. You ever want to see the space race really take off? You ever want to see us really make progress in space? Privatize it. We've privatized it, and it's booming all over the place. It makes the Russians, and Chinese, and Americans look like they're going backwards at how fast the rate of technology is growing here. I mean, come on, Elon built a bunch of SpaceX shuttles and just gave them to NASA, and that's why I'm building them on. I'm going back to building my rocket to go to Mars and the moon. So, and I've got a bunch of reusable craft that they can both use the rockets and the capsules, which NASA can never seem to qualify right without blowing us up. And here we are, this man wanting to go. Maybe he knows what's coming. Maybe he knows Russia can't be trusted. Maybe he doesn't want to live on a planet that glows. I'm just saying, people. Right now, with China, I don't see it's hard because nuking the Ukraine is like nuking Russia anyway. Because any fallout from the Ukraine is going to fall out in Russia because of trade wars. Same problem the United States and China has. We can't nuke each other because, in case all y'all forget this, every so often our country gets covered in this red dust that comes from where? China. We share the same jet stream and the same wind. So if they nuke us, they're nuking themselves. If we nuke them, we're nuking ourselves. Russia's a little bit higher, won't be as bad then, but for us and China, it's a direct trade one. You can't nuke one without nuking the other. So if you decide you're going to destroy the United States, you just decide you're going to destroy yourself. It just has to be. And if both countries nuke each other, the amount of radiation circling the globe at this time in the northern hemisphere will pretty much just wipe everything out. Now, you people in the southern hemisphere might have vision of the winds change, and the only thing y'all going to have to worry about is the convection currents carrying radiation through the wall and down there. You might be able to survive that. The rest of us know, sorry, we're going to be a big glowing mass on the top of the planet. And who wants to live, look at it from Xi Jinping and Putin's side. Who wants to live in an underground base until they die? We had a big, beautiful blue planet. I know Putin's got kids. I know two of his daughters he's really into. The one who's a neuroscientist, she's running some big lab over there. He don't want her living there. He wants her out in the pub, enjoying her life and showing, hey, look what my kids can do. He doesn't want to live, even though he's crazy now. I have noticed he's gotten a little, it was scary when Trump came out and said he was crazy. I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean Trump, he's a little crazy? No, he's gotten a little crazy before I could talk to the guy. And he is weird. A lot of people said you'll notice when he has his cabinet together, they're like 7 sitting at this end together. Yeah. He has Putin way down on the other end of the table. And I'm sure it's a COVID thing, but people saying he's becoming patched, unreasonable, and not willing to talk. And this is coming from his own oligarchs, some of them that have now put bounties out on Putin. There's currently now $11 million to take Putin out, put out by 3 of his so-called buddies. I'm sure if he gets his hands in there, they're dead too, by the way. So that's another thing. Risking pissing Putin off as an individual is dangerous. I mean, he's killed people over the years.
Yeah. polonium and
into that.
Novichok and dioxin. Likes to use
Well,
a lot
they
of that
said
stuff.
he was. They said he was in on the Cuban. When the Cuban used the what the hell they used against
It was
the
either
nitrogen-
sickness, like the strange
that-
sickness. that they're all having.
they were using. I forgot what, it wasn't microwaves. It was some type of wave they were using, and it's something like a microwave. And damn, so long ago.
Yeah, a microwave would do something like that.
Yeah, so, locally, oh God, people I've seen microwave do horrible things. I've seen a guy. Quick story: I was working. U.S. Navy is on. It's still in tech school, by the way. I just finished up special forces. I was in tech school in Millington, Tennessee, of all places. And I was working in the flight control center. We were updating radar systems. 2 were on, 2 were off. So they get this button on the side, and that flashes let you know it's on. You don't want to open up a panel when it's on because it'll crisp you. I mean, it's a serious amount of microwaves going through here. This isn't like you little. It's just serious. So we're all working. I was open the other side. I just shut down the unit. I was taking it apart and I was putting in the new transmitter, whatever the hell they call it. And I just got through putting it in. And I seen your boy pull the panel. I said, "Dude, is it off?" And he heard him start screaming. He just cooked his whole side in under 30 seconds. Cooked it. He was dead. I mean, he was just dead. And he dropped. It was basically, and I don't even want to tell you what it smelled like. It was horrible. It was. And meanwhile, the panel was now off, and the machine was bouncing microwaves all in this building. It actually burnt a hole through the side of the damn building to get out. It was crazy. And finally, I managed to relay it to a main switch. I just cut the whole power off the whole tower, which is extremely dangerous because we had aircraft in flight. So they had to bring up these old two-way two-way radios. We had to get in touch with them to let them know that they were in circle mode until further notice, or were being pushed into another airport. I got a commendation that would have to look like shit to that. I was like, he said, "You got the old rib and the whole 9 yards." I said, "You can keep it." Too tired. I don't need no commendation for somebody dying. It aggravated the shit out of me. It should have been, it was one of the things that just shouldn't have happened. It should have just never happened. And this guy wasn't even a rookie. I mean, he was actually one of the instructors.
He just screwed up.
He got lazy. He wasn't paying attention. He just wasn't paying attention because you always before you, because the light's flashing, so you push the button in, so it turns off the light. They're not even supposed to unlock until you push the button in and the light goes off. And because there's several ways to turn it off, but when you're doing it where there's a hard switch that cuts the whole unit off. I don't know if he thought he hit it or he didn't hit it, or maybe the light was not working or something. But it was instant. I mean, it was just instantaneous. And just weird. I watched one burn a hole through the side of a conning tower on the USS Nimitz. Idiot guy playing with it. I said, "Dude, is that thing off?" He said, "Yeah, it's off." I said, "Dude, are you sure it's off?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Dude, why don't you double check?" And I still remember the lieutenant commanders in the bridge, because the captain was, I don't know where he was, and the first officer wasn't there because we were just sitting. And I still remember, I said, "Man, you got to make sure that stuff. That thing gets bouncing around here. It's going to wreck some serious equipment. We're going to all get in deep shit." And I still remember the lieutenant. He said, "What is that smell?" I'm like, "What is that smell?" And then you hear the guy. He's cursing in 5 different ways. All of a sudden, you see daylight coming from underneath the equipment. It actually went melted through this. I mean, you got to remember, this thing's reinforced to take bullets and explosions and shit. I was like, "Oh, I'm not telling the captain." I said, "I'm not on duty. Screw y'all." Well, I wasn't in charge on duty, so I still remember this poor lieutenant commander. He says, "Man, my first day on the bridge, I'm gonna get fired." I'm going to the break. I was like,
did he get fired?
No, but he got a lot of shit over it. We all had to go see. We all had to go to captain's, man. I still remember. He said, "Joe, what's going on here?" He said, "You've been on my boat for a while." I said, "I had nothing to do with it, sir." I said, I asked 30 times, "Is it off? Is it off? Is it off? Is it off?" I said, he outranked me. What can I say? He's like, "Yeah, not anymore. He doesn't." I got promoted to get demoted. I was like, "Okay, man, it's just shit that happens." I mean, what happens is it gets intense when you're on this. Same thing for these guys over in the Ukraine right now. These Russian guys didn't want to fight. You could see it in their face. They thought they were on maneuvers. They had no idea they were going to kill people. And it's hard to kill someone you ain't never killed anybody before. That's what makes the U.S. so dangerous. We've got 50 years of trained killers right now, and pilots. We've been fighting, for the last 50 years. So we're dangerous. But no, the rest of the world ain't like that. Russia hasn't. When's the last time Russia did anything? Well, we'll say Syria, but that was a joke. Afghanistan was the last time they were really involved in anything. They got their asses handed to them over that. Thanks to over the shoulder rocket launches.
Yeah, which are sending the same things.
Yeah,
to
so we're
Ukraine
doing
right
the
now.
same. That's the Ukraine. And that's another thing. How do you? It doesn't look like Russia could, even if they could take the Ukraine, it doesn't look like they could hold it. I don't know if they've
Yeah,
got the
I don't.
people to hold it. I mean, what's Russia? About
Well,
180 million people now, and probably only 40 or 50
No.
million of them are fighting age.
No, they have 144 million,
Yeah,
and
you
that's
know,
down. That's down
yeah,
from 148 million in 1992.
that's not good. They're going downward. And I mean, they're a big,
No.
huge country too. And you know, last I heard, they're older than their age. Over 60 age was almost 50% of the country. So I don't know, man. I mean, how do you go to war with a country like that?
Well, that's the other thing too. If you look at the age group that's pre-prime military age, it's shrinking.
Yeah.
So this is the last time they're going to be able to do anything, and they're going to burn through this generation. Then after that, they're not going to. They could have a demographic collapse. So
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do.
This is the last chance that Putin had to do anything like this. But after this, they're done.
Well, you know, he can go borrow 300-400 million Chinese now. You know, what the hell? What's 3-4? I'm sure Xi Jinping will have, look, dude, I'll give you 300-400 million. Just get them out of my country, man. I'll loan them down with no expectations of getting them back, Putin. You keep them, whoever survives.
Yeah, actually, you raise a point that I haven't even thought about. Like that's a potential point of leverage of China over Russia, whereas the Chinese say, "Hey, look, we might be able to get you out of this bind, but it's going to cost you." And then we might see the same, like the reverse thing we saw in Korea with 250,000 Chinese soldiers that show up overnight and surprise the Ukrainians. That said, the Chinese actually had a pretty good relationship with Ukraine. There was a lot of trade between those two countries.
Yeah,
so I doubt they would get involved unless maybe we got involved.
Yeah, it's the only thing I'm worried about. Taiwan is what's going to be the problem for China, and they want them back then, but obviously they don't want them back there to start war because it's different than Ukraine. This kind of bites the Ukrainians, but Taiwan's more valuable to the world than the Ukrainians because of processors. So when you control 88% of all processors, well, yeah, you're way more valuable, and the world's just not going to let China have that technology. Excuse me, no. Why do you keep thinking we sail in the cruises through the strait all the time? That's to tell you if you blow them up, I'm going to blow you up. And nobody has an official protection pact. Technically, the United States is an unofficial protection pact with Taiwan. No one has an official one. I heard the other day,